Hello and welcome back, everybody, to round 2 of the third weekly of the Eternal Tournament Series Season 3. We are about to jump into a game right here between iReedMinds and JonJon. iReedMinds is on, I believe this is 5-faction Nyctotraxian Control, and JonJon is on Khalees by the looks of it.
Yeah, a much more traditional build than what we saw last round. Just the base 3 colors with the more traditional distribution of cards, Dark Wisp, Grandeur, all of that.
And we see Nyctotraxian coming right off the bat and actually picking up a Ruin, which is a pretty great card in this matchup for iReed to pick up.
Oh, certainly. It's going to pretty heavily inhibit JonJon's ability to build up a giant Callus, which is going to be one of their more premier game plans. Although JonJon has included a couple copies of Omen Reaper and a couple copies of Bait to deal with that endgame problem Callus has we were talking about before. So maybe those will come into play.
Yeah. Maybe this is with the Bait then. I guess this is what some people have started terming like Stone Scar Sacrifice. I'm not sure if it has the Sacrifice engine that the other deck an altar.
He does not have any copies of Brimstone Altar. Just the normal sack outlets in Devour and Combust.
Okay. And looks like JonJon got his choice. Going to go ahead and grab one of those 2 sigils and play it down. And he will at least be able to play Torrent next turn if he would like.
Yeah, and we're just going to see iReedMinds build up their mana here, try and slow the game down as much as possible. We saw the Lightning Storm a couple turns ago to slow down JonJon. He just wants to get up to a point where he can play his Nyctotraxian and all his other late game high power level cards.
Yeah, and I definitely think it looks like he's going to get this chance to. Things definitely going well for iReed here. JonJon not having a particularly fast start. We are going to see him get a little bit of value here off of combusting the token to take out the Seraph.
Yeah, I actually don't hate JonJon's spot here. They have the Devour end step here to make a pretty formidable Oblivion Spike on end step, and then that Torrent of Spiders is also going to be powered up pretty high as well. So JonJon does have like pretty powerful threats going for them here.
Yeah, absolutely. Tundra Explorer, an interesting hit for iReedMinds. I kind of happy to see this Tundra Explorer come down. If it doesn't get cleared away immediately, that card actually could generate quite a bit of value, given that the 5-faction Nyctotraxian control deck plays a lot more spells than it does anything else.
Yeah, it probably has a reasonable hit rate, probably north of like 30%-ish. So it'll be interesting to see if that gets any cards. Although we're going to see it eat a hit from an Oblivion Spike here and cut that off.
Yeah, we are going to see Oblivion Spike come down, but iReedMinds packing the Ruin in hand, so he's not too worried about this for the time being. And you're probably going to see him follow this up with a Lumen Defender. Yeah. And he could actually go ahead and save this Ruin and wait to see if JonJon has anything to do about it, see if he makes some interesting sacrifices trying to buff it up. But I'm just going to try and swing with it and have the Ruin pick it up.
Yeah, the reason to do this is that in Eternal, the Avatar can only swing once per turn. So if JonJon had an additional weapon, he could attack with that if iReedMinds destroyed that Oblivion Spike on their main phase.
Yep. JonJon, interestingly enough, trying to push in the 1 token for the Devour trick. Deciding if he actually wants to do that, though, and it seems like he's going to say no.
Yeah, now the game has slowed down to a point where it is much more favorable to iReedMinds. JonJon's pretty much out of gas. The Strain of Shadow looks very underwhelming, and we're just going to see a bunch of Nyctotraxians come down in the coming turns.
Yeah, now that iReedMinds has gotten all the way to his late game, I have a feeling he will be able to close this one out pretty easily. Nyctotraxian is a very scary unit if you don't have removal to deal with her, since she is just an 8/8 flyer, and that presents a very fast clock.
Yeah, Nyctotraxian is actually just very formidable on her own because that she is multicolored. So it cuts off Suffocate, Annihilate. It's really just like Death Strike and Permafrost are the 2 things that are able to deal with her. Although in this matchup, JonJon does have the availability of Combust and even Madness Shenanigans.
Yeah, he does have Combust and Madness, and he did pick both those cards up off the Devour, so he will have those available in the coming turn, and it's actually going to create a bit of a blowout here for him on the backside.
Yeah, this is certainly a way for JonJon to claw back into this game by taking this Nyctotraxy and jamming for 8 and then killing both the Nikto and the Lumen Defender.
Yeah, and this is the problem that one of the problems iReedMinds can have here with this deck is having his big win conditions sacrificed away over and over. The other way is when JonJon establishes a weapon that gets unanswered.
Yeah, certainly. We see JonJon debating whether or not to deploy the Torrent of Spiders for 3 here. I think it's certainly a close decision because the 2 grinded alone are not enough pressure. But if you deploy the Spiders and iReedMinds is a harsh rule, you're out of gas. That's it.
Yeah, and we do see iReedMinds having that harsh rule, so this is going to come down to what JonJon can start to pick up off the top of his deck. Shadow is not going to do very much for him, and iReedMinds is taking over.
Yeah, JonJon has to rip pretty much just straight gas from this point. And if they just start off with their assembly line, that's like step 1. Step 2 probably involves a Callus, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we will see. iReedMinds looks like he's deliberating a little bit about the decision here. Checking to see what's been played, deciding if maybe he needs to put this harsh rule down before he puts the Nyctotraxian down, but actually just going to choose to forgo playing Nyctotraxian.
Yeah, and I think the reason for this is that iReedMinds is playing 4 copies of Twinning Ritual, which would be dead if iReedMinds did deploy the Nyctotraxian. So that's why they might be a little bit apprehensive. They're not under too much pressure. They can sit by for a little bit, give themselves a few more draws to see how it develops, and then play the game from there.
Yeah, absolutely. This Azendel's gift, though, coming down is pretty big for iReedMinds. Going to force JonJon to lose all of his removal and sack outlets.
Yeah, that's certainly a big deal. Now that iReedMinds knows that the coast is going to be clear for this Nyctotraxian unless JonJon rips something off the top.
Yeah, we'll see if he decides to jam it here. He's been patient with it to this point, but I would kind of like to see it come down here and start getting aggressive. He doesn't have really anything to fear except the top deck combust. But we see JonJon picking up a bait, which is an interesting card, but iReedMinds is definitely going to shut this off with the Desert Marshal.
Yeah, even if somehow JonJon was able to convert the bait into a 7/7 Hellkite, Nyctotraxian outclasses the smaller dragon, so it wasn't really going to help anyway.
Yeah, that is very true, though we do see that Desert Marshal coming in and silencing it, and this is why some people questionable on bait.
Yeah, I think you need to have some number of ways in your deck to immediately sacrifice it. That's why we've seen a trend up in Brimstone Altar, because you can immediately play the bait and sacrifice it in the same turn, not giving your opponent a window to Desert Marshal it or use similar sauce effects. But JonJon has eschewed things like that for other cards in their deck.
Yeah, if it goes off, bait can be incredibly strong, but not inherently strong is the unit itself. Just a 6 power 1/1, so got to have an immediate way to turn that around. Otherwise, it will just get silenced down. Since silence is such a prevalent mechanic in the format.
Certainly. And we see the iReedMinds getting like medium punished for deploying the Nyctotraxian when they did. You see there's the Twinning Ritual I was talking about before that is now just stranded in their hand without any target. Although iReedMinds is presenting lethal over 2 turns, they have to be a little bit hesitant about attacking here because a Torch off the top could be lethal. Does JonJon play Torch? I don't think they do.
That's actually an interesting question. I would assume he would be playing Torch since he is playing Fire, but maybe the deck forgoes it. Let's go ahead.
I do not see any copies of Torch in the deck. They do have Umbran Reaper, but that wouldn't be immediate damage. It would prevent the Nyctotraxian from attacking the following turn. Although they have the Eye of Winter. Never mind.
Yeah, we do see that Umbran Reaper picked up, but yeah, due to the Eye of Winter, unfortunately, not going to be enough here. So JonJon going to try and sit a space, let it go through, and drop the Umbran Reaper, but he recognizes that he has lost this game, and iReed completely in control here.
Yeah, so just have to put this Umbran Reaper on ice and swing on through for lethal, and that should be game 1.
Yeah, so iReedMinds taking down the first game with the Nyctotraxian control deck. You see Callus chalking up another loss here, and this is why Callus is an interesting deck. It has a very high potential to go off, but unfortunately, you do have these situations where you just don't have the Callus, you don't have the pieces. It never quite comes together. Actually, I've been calling this a Callus deck because I assumed it was, but no, this is totally just Stone Scar Sacrifice. So the Bloodright Calluses are actually in the sideboard.
Which is certainly very interesting because, like, a lot of the free win equity that the Callus deck would normally get is just from an early big Callus. Like, playing a effective sort of the Sky King on turn 3 or 4 is going to beat most decks. And sacrificing that draw potential is certainly interesting. It looks like Champion of Chaos is what is coming in place of the Bloodright Calluses, which is certainly a powerful card.
Yeah, Champion of Chaos can definitely get the job done here. It is interesting, though, that we do see this sacrifice deck, or a deck being labeled sacrifice, with not a ton of ways to sacrifice, primarily utilizing Combust and Devour, which are both excellent cards when you can sacrifice tokens to them. And it does have the Madness combo, obviously enough. But let's check out some sideboards for these players. So let's go ahead and check on... We have JonJon's pulled up, so he's got 2 Ruin, 3 Sabotages, 2 Bloodright Calluses, 3 Brimstone Altars, 3 Bandit Queens, and 2 Steelfang Chakra.
And this is like a really interesting sideboard play from JonJon because he can actually morph from a Callus type deck to a Queen type deck. And that's going to present iReedMinds with pretty different challenges they have to overcome. And maybe they don't even side in the Callus. It gives some mind games for iReedMinds to think about.
Yeah, it certainly does. It gives him some options. If I was him, though, I think I'm bringing in the Callus here. Like, I like bringing in the weapons against these control decks. I also like the Brimstone Altar to give you a sacrifice engine that's going to be hard for the control deck to deal with, and it makes it so that your boards aren't as susceptible to the AoE removal in Harsh Rule and Lightning Storm.
Yeah, Brimstone Altar is I actually found to be quite good against decks that give you time to do things, because you could just like chip in with your Grenade and get a couple damage from them, and then when they play a big creature that prevents them from attacking, you just convert them into 2 damage and keep chipping and keep chipping your opponents down until they just die.
Yeah, also of note, Sabotage in the sideboard, we'll probably see that one come in. There are quite a lot of targets to hit.
Yes, certainly.
In the 5-faction deck. Lots of spells. But we are going to jump back in here to Game 2. iReedMinds leading the series 1-2-0 currently. Let's see if JonJon on the Callus deck can get one back.
You see iReedMinds brought in the Decay there. So they do have access to that. And we see the Oblivion Spike in JonJon's hand that will probably, at some point later in time, meet that Decay.
Yeah, almost certainly. And iReedMinds definitely bringing in that Decay from the sideboard, going to pay off nicely in this matchup. Although I don't think JonJon brought in the Calluses. I couldn't tell, so we'll have to see as the game goes on.
It's interesting that he kept in the Madness, although I guess they had the Stray into Shadows to sideboard out that were also pretty underwhelming. It's interesting to see how they decided to sideboard.
Yeah, this is interesting right here, too. iReedMinds choosing to find a double influence on some of his sigils over actually trying to get all of the different sigils assembled. And this can be a risky play because it's very easy to hit your double influence requirements with the deck naturally due to all the banners you're playing, but you do only have one fire sigil and 1 shadow sigil, so you do have to find the way or seek power to actually pull out your necessary influence to cast Nyctotraxion.
Yeah, and I guess the good thing you could say for iReedMinds' deck is that it is just essentially a Time Justice Primal control deck with Nyctotraxion. So if they don't draw the Shadow and Fire sources, the only thing that precludes them from playing is Nyctotraxion. And as that's their win con, they could wait a bit on that. They don't really need to turn the corner particularly early.
That is true as well. And we see a Sabotage being played by JonJon. His choice between 2 Lightning Storms and a Decay takes a Lightning Storm and gets his Champion of Chaos down on the board. And iReedMinds definitely going to silence this one, I have a feeling, when the Champion of Chaos swings in.
Yeah, I'll probably just have it bump with the Combre Healer. It's interesting to see the Sabotage take the Lightning Storm because iReedMinds has a backup. So it doesn't really affect the game a lot. But I guess they expect that they'll have to sweep their board multiple times and want to just dilute that effect as much as possible.
Yeah, that is true. We do see the Lightning Storm being good to play right now for him. And yeah, if JonJon had played that Torrent, that would have been a huge mistake here, knowing that the second Storm is in hand. And iReed has time to fire off the Storm whenever he wants, but he is not feeling the pressure right now.
Yeah, he doesn't even need to because he just has this combo healer holding all these tokens back, so he can just hang out, which it forces JonJon to extend out further into the Lightning Storm and then get blown out. So JonJon's kind of like in the clamps here.
Yeah, well, we see iReedMinds picking up. I believe the card is called Passage of Eons. It's one of the new cards from Jack's Bounty that hasn't seen a lot of play because it's more of a tournament sideboard deck, like we see it being used right here. Silence all enemy units, destroy all enemy attachments for 6 power and 2 time.
Yeah, there are certainly a variety of boards that JonJon can produce for that card would be devastating. This isn't one of them, but that's largely because iReedMinds is so far ahead right now and they don't really need to do anything. If things deteriorate, that passage will probably come into play.
Yeah, absolutely. JonJon getting down a Dark Wisp here, hopefully going to be able to cycle that in the coming turns. iReedMinds has decisions to make, picks up a harsh rule for when things get too bad. And this might make him want to play the Lightning Storm now that he does have a way to clear.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm still not sure he's compelled to act, and do you see him pass the turn there? It's just, there's really no reason for him to do anything. He does have inevitability. He's drawing to the Nick Detraxians. He has the more powerful endgame. He can just hang out and tell JonJon, do something. You need to change the board, say, I don't.
This is going to be an interesting decision. It looked like JonJon was considering going Madness into Queen, and I kind of actually liked that play there that could have pushed about 13 or 14 damage. So
it's interesting. Because JonJon's deck doesn't really have reach, so even getting the opponent down to like below 10, you still need the creatures to push that last points of damage, and so just hitting for that big chunk wouldn't have really made much forward progress towards winning the game, I don't think, and that's why we saw him not do it.
Yeah, an interesting point to consider there. iReedMinds going ahead and grabbing the Azendal's Gift, definitely going to fire this one off, and might even choose to drop in the Lightning Storm here. I might have liked to have seen that, though he would have cleared his own Desert Marshal.
So now we might see JonJon's hand forced on the play, or think about last turn of Madness into Bandit Queen, just because they have to unload as many cards this turn as possible, because they are going to be discarded at the end of turn to the gift.
Yeah, very true. I would like to see him maybe do some variation of... well, it's honestly hard to say. Like, I would like to see the Oblivion Spike come down here, because I feel like it will generate the most value of any of the cards in his hand.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, he does know about the decay, so that does check the Oblivion Spike. You would love to play like the Umber Reaper and the Spike, or like the Umber Reaper and the Queen, but his mana is just a little bit choked to do either of that, so he can really only play one of his powerful spells, and we do see him elect for the Umber Reaper.
Yeah, he gets the Umber Reaper down. He's pushed iReedMinds down to 19, but iReedMinds has this Lightning Storm to clean up everything except the Champion of Chaos, or the harsh rule to clean up the whole board. But yeah, gonna decide to keep his Cumber Healer alive, and I like that decision out of him.
Yeah, it's interesting to see him elect to just take the 5 from this Umber Reaper. He could have passage into the Eons first, but I guess he wants to save that for the future turns, which does make sense. It's not a huge value to use it there.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier, where JonJon's deck doesn't have a lot of reach, even though it is a Stone Scar deck. So iReedMinds can afford to take a little bit more damage here and there.
You see the Raid of Frogs is a bit of a nombo with the Azendal's Gift, but that's a good board state to be in when your opponent just doesn't have cards in hand.
Yeah, absolutely. iReedMinds really needs to find something here. He needs to get his game plan rolling, because all he has is attachment, destruction, and silences.
Yeah, this is an anemic clock and only 2 Grenadin, but it is a clock. Like, iReedMinds does need to draw something in the next, as it stands, 6 turns.
Yeah, and he has basically bricked for about 2 or 3 turns now, so it is conceivable that he will not find anything. Gonna see JonJon's just gonna fire off this Varus Favor and play the Sigil. And JonJon also looking for any type of unit he can slam on this board to really increase the speed of this clock.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you see this Lightning Storm come to take on the 2 grounded. It's not a great exchange, but does remove the clock. And I think iReedMinds is just drawing to like 2 copies of Seraph, the 4 Nyctic Traxian, which he cannot cast currently, and possibly a Mystic Ascendant, depending on how they boarded. So he's not drawing like super live.
Yeah, very true. JonJon picking up Sabotage, you're going to choose what he wants to go get. And I have to imagine it's got to be Decay.
Yeah.
Not too worried about the silence for Passage of Eons, but more worried about the fast speed taking care of one of his weapons once he finally finds one.
Yeah, certainly. Taking the Decay allows him to get at least 1 swing from a weapon, whereas the Passage has to take care of it on iReed's turn.
And this Cumbria Healer completely just resets the progress that JonJon had been making. And now he is locked out of the board since the 2/5 body matches up very well with the units that JonJon can present in these 1/1 Grenadin tokens.
Yeah, certainly. And also, the thing that the Zendel's Gift does that's very awkward for JonJon is they have a lot of synergy-based cards in the deck, like Madness and Combust and even Callous. And if they draw them in the wrong order and they're forced to cast them in the wrong order, it could be very problematic. Or just they have to discard them.
Yeah, very true. iReedMinds, though, notably hitting Wisdom into Wisdom that turn. So he finally found the card draw he was looking for and picks up Lumen Defender, Sword of the Sky King, and Cumbria Healer. And with that Lumen Defender giving him 5 health and the Cumbria Healer to give him another 3, even the Brimstone Altar I don't think is going to be enough here.
Yeah, the Brimstone Altar was certainly a good draw, but it looks like iReedMinds has drawn enough to overcome it. We see this board state where the Grenadin can't attack anymore, and the Brimstone Altar can allow them to get some value, but it's just too much work at this point.
Yeah, and iReedMinds just going ahead and getting the Cumbria Healer down, and yeah, his board has just become so much. We see Oblivion Spike come down for JonJon. So this is actually somewhat relevant in the meantime. He might be able to clear up a decent part of this, decent portion of this board, and Sword of the Sky King for iReedMinds not going to be able to do very much.
This is an interesting attack too, because right now you could protect the Oblivion Spike. I mean, iReedMinds doesn't know about the Sword of the Sky King. That obviously factors in, but they could be more conservative about that line, try to protect it from potential things like that.
Yeah, very true. iReedMinds, JonJon's going to be forced to block one of these here with iReed, with the Grenadin token, and this is going to leave the weapon open. No, it won't, sorry, because there's still units on the board, so he is protected for the time being, but interesting choice out of iReedMinds there not to drop the Seraph and activate it. Would have gotten cleared away by the Oblivion Spike, but I think you might have just been able to gamble with the activation there.
Yeah, I certainly would have given great consideration to playing the Sword of the Sky King that turn to chip down these Grenadin, put pressure on the Oblivion Spike, because as it stands, the Oblivion Spike can just take care of both creatures if they elected to leave a Grenadin back. JonJon's kind of banking on drawing a creature from this Devour, and they did hit.
Yeah, and he actually should have... I imagine he wanted to play this Dark Wisp here instead and sacrifice it for the Combust, but I don't think it's going to matter too much, though it could. Nyctic Traxian picked up for iReedMinds and hits a Stone Scar Leviathan.
Interesting.
That is a very interesting card to see pick up.
It does accelerate the clock a bit. It would allow iReedMinds to attack for lethal with the Nyctic Traxian at some point later.
Yeah, it does accelerate your clock by quite a bit. In fact, so much so that I actually down here. I would have liked to have seen him just force JonJon to slam into the 7/7 and set himself to 7 health.
Yeah, now the Stone Scar Leviathan probably won't die. I would imagine JonJon will eat the Seraph as it is the more pressing threat, and possibly just look to chump block the Stone Scar Leviathan with the Dark Wisp, maybe draw into some more business. Although I think they're compelled to devour this Dark Wisp this turn because of the Azendel's Gift.
Yeah, that is true. With Azendel's Gift on him, he can't hold it up and do the Devour trick where you declare a blocker to negate damage, so he is just going to need to get his cards down. But he does draw 3 cards here and hits a quarry into another quarry. Let's see what this second core he picks up. A Sabotage, so not terrible. He'll be able to take out this Sword of the Sky King now.
Yeah, that's a pretty good hit. It does take out a decent amount of iReedMinds pressure. They're now just left with the Stone Scar Leviathan and the Nyctotraxian. That should be enough to finish the game out, but if JonJon draws into some combusts, that might not be the case.
Yeah, Nyctotraxian will put a clock up here now that Find the Way is picked up and it can actually be played. In the meantime, though, Stone Scar Leviathan going to start trying to push in for 7 damage, and JonJon probably not going to block this since the Stone Scar Leviathan dying is going to set him to 7 anyway. So he's essentially playing with free health right now.
Yeah, there's no reason to block the Leviathan. It just doesn't really do a lot.
Yeah,
He needs these Grenadin in for his payoff cards. His like live outs are things like Combust and Callus, maybe.
Yeah, that's definitely what he needs to find here. He needs to find a way to take care of this board, but I don't think actually that's going to happen. And yeah, we even see vanquishing his own Stone Scar Leviathan to push in with the Nyctotraxian. Very stylish play out of iReedMinds and a very nice game for him, taking the series 2-0 with this Nyctotraxian control deck.
Yeah, it's a good showing by Nyctotraxian control. It's the Callus deck was not able to really establish much pressure as we saw in the past 2 rounds. It really relies heavily upon the synergies coming together to do something more powerful than the opponent.
Yeah, very